A professor of mine once said that Halloween is the one day a year where we pretend that we don't wear masks during the rest of the year. And given that it is late February, it seems like the perfect moment to talk about this Halloween analogy. So let's do it. Over the course of the videos that I have created, I have regularly advertised my discomfort with struggling publicly. And the fact that in a way this channel is an attempt or an experiment in making me more comfortable with struggling publicly because honestly, it's just unavoidable. I realized today in figuring out what to talk about that I haven't really talked about or explored the origin story of my discomfort. I think realistically, everyone in this world is at some level uncomfortable struggling in front of other people. It is a profoundly vulnerable thing to do, and that makes it difficult. But I also think that I am perhaps hyper allergic. I have made myself even more uncomfortable than the average person. And I think that that's because of the nature of the life that I've lived and some of the survival mechanisms and adaptations that I have adopted to protect myself. So this story kind of goes back to the very beginning. I am dyslexic, and I don't think that's something that I've talked about on this channel before, but it's a very core part of me. And the reason that it's so core is that it has affected and modified the way that I learn, how quickly I can read, and a whole variety of other sort of academic affectations that changed the way that I grew up and changed the way that I experienced school and work. One thing that reminded me of this uniquely that I think is worth calling out was a video question and answer that Adam Savage of Tested, we mentioned him before. He's the one who I can watch organizing Q-tips for hours and be perfectly content. But anyways, he was talking about some of the fan events that he hosted after he completed filming Mythbusters. And his observation was that in hosting those events, he had to help acclimate the staff that was facilitating those events around some of the people that would come to his events who were unique. And I use that term because we are all different, and some of our differences can be classified as somewhere on the spectrum of autism or dyslexic or ADHD. You know, the list kind of goes on and on. But the reality was that Mythbusters was a phenomenon that in some ways was uniquely exciting to a lot of people that existed on some of those different spectrums. And so he, being a very kind of compassionate and wonderful person, wanted his staff to understand how to best facilitate and create the best experience for people who were unique. And so he talked a bit about dyslexia and kind of made a really strong case for something that I'm not going to do as eloquently. But basically the idea that being different than the norm, and the norm is kind of like something that I'll talk about more, but is a social construct, isn't a negative or a positive, it is just a difference. And that has been very much my own experience with dyslexia. There are certain things that are easier for me and harder for me as a dyslexic. I think that a lot of my experiences and learnings and skills in computer science came staggeringly naturally to me. The decomposition of algorithms and understanding how to encode those into a programming language was something that I took to incredibly naturally, whereas reading a paragraph and telling you what was in it was something that I struggled endlessly with. And these differences were most apparent in initially the world of school, because school is very much a homogenized and generalized experience designed to cater to the practices that ensure that the most kids get the best education. And I was not part of that group. And so over the years, you've seen an ever increasing number of resources available to kids who are different in the way that they learn, where standard school doesn't necessarily serve them quite right. And I was lucky to have access to some of those resources. There were special education centers that I had access to that I was very lucky to have access to. However, you really can't escape the kind of square peg, round hole feeling when you aren't one of the people that learns naturally in a way that is consistent with the curriculum that you're being presented, when all of your peers in class do have that comfort and can do that. That difference presented itself as friction, right? I was in constant friction with the generalized, standardized methodologies of the school. And then there were certain countermeasures that they deployed that were meant to help me navigate it. And all of that kind of surfaced as my apparent struggle, right? I struggled to learn in the way that all of my peers were learning. And that was difficult for me. That created a feeling of distinct unease in me. That struggle reached a boiling point in 5th grade when I was asked to leave the school that I had been in due to said struggles. And that's a hard thing for me to remember because that was a very traumatic moment. I was losing my peer group. I was losing the comfort of the place that I was and the place that I was familiar with. And it was a severe loss of safety. And when I went to the new school, I had an opportunity that we all have when we enter a new environment. And that is the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, or to call back to the quote from the beginning, put on a new mask and see how that works. And so the mask that I put on starting in 6th grade was a, what if I wasn't the person who struggled? And that may seem like a kind of ridiculous thing to posit, right? I'm just going to decide not to struggle. But it really manifested for me as a adaptation where I chose to hide my struggles at all cost and change the way that I was playing the game. Because school at its core is a game, right? Just like any of the video games that I play on Twitch or anything else, school has rules, you follow those rules, you get results, you try to optimize your results and, win at school, which I guess in high school age is get into a good college, and in college is get good grades to get a good job. But anyways, it's a game. And I had been playing the game by the rules of the game, and I shifted my focus to playing the player, not the game. School is also a highly flawed type of environment in the sense that your grades are determined by teachers who have innate biases. And it is hard to give someone that you like a bad grade. And so by playing the player, I really meant ingratiating myself with the people who were teaching me, making sure that I was participating in the extracurriculars that my teachers cared about. There was a reason that I was part of Science League and Math League. It wasn't just that I loved them, although they were quite a bit of fun and I do look back fondly on them. But they were also something that the respective teachers who were running those programs were excited to have a kid with a good attitude who was a people pleaser as part of. And so starting in 6th grade, I focused a lot more on controlling the perception that people had of me. That meant hiding my struggle and also making sure that I was in everyone's good graces. And things got better for me. There are a variety of reasons that they got better. I think that the school that I was in from kindergarten to 5th grade was a bad match for me. But in my head, and I think subconsciously, the primary reason that things got better was because I changed my strategy. And this strategy seemed to be working better for me than my previous strategies. Throughout those years, and then through high school and through college, I continued to hone this craft. I got better and better at putting myself in other people's shoes, figuring out what my teachers' motivations were, figuring out what they cared about, figuring out how to ingratiate myself with them, all in the quest of creating safety through controlling people's perception of me and making them look at me and think, this is a smart kid, I care about this kid, I should give them a good grade, even though they're not winning at the game with the classical rules. By 2007, when I joined the professional workplace, I had become pretty much an expert at this. And unsurprisingly, the real world jobs and things like that aren't so different, right? It's a different set of rules that we're playing by, but we're still playing by a set of rules that someone else has defined that work particularly well for, I'll say, average people, people who conform to the norm, and are often a lot more challenging for those of us who are a little weird, a little different. When I say weird, I'm only referring to myself. So another way to put it is, by 2007, I had solved the problem, I had subconsciously internalized that solution, and it was just a part of who I was. But in solving that problem, I had created for myself a different problem. And that problem was my hyper allergy to struggling in the sight of others. Because if I now equated safety with hiding my struggle, then I had also equated showing my struggle with a decided presence of danger. And I really felt that in my day-to-day work life. I was constantly concerned that someone would see me struggle, think less of me, and then create some type of danger or peril for me. And that was really, really difficult to deal with and something that weighed very heavily on me. And it's only in the last couple of years, like I was saying before, that I've started to understand where that came from. At what point did I create this linkage between struggle and danger that became such an integral part of my day-to-day work life? The way that I'm dealing with this now, kind of in the wake of that professional career and now with school way in the rearview mirror, is I've come to realize that the allergy is not mine. I don't actually think that I have an allergy to struggling. This video here and the last video are good examples of it. I didn't lose a lot of sleep due to the fact that the sound was bad in my last video. I struggled publicly, and I'm still here to talk about it. The allergy, I think, is actually in the systems that are created by society. Our schools, our workplaces, all of these different environments that are commodified to the norm or average of society, and as a result, allergic to people who operate differently, right? Standardized testing was never going to work particularly well for me. I was never going to be the kid who was given a book-based homework assignment and just come back having read the book and nailed it, right? I was going to learn in different ways. The issue, though, is these large societal constructs are so immovable that their allergies become our problems. And so while it wasn't a problem with me, I didn't hate struggling, I had to adapt to the system that I existed in. And the way that I did that was by essentially taking on that allergy and making myself uncomfortable with the thing that the system was uncomfortable with. And I think that a lot, if not all people, experience some form of this in our life. Because while not everyone has, a framed certificate saying that they are dyslexic, we're all different and unique, and parts of the generalized, commodified workplace or school place don't line up with our values, our sensibilities, the way that we operate, what makes us happy. And so to survive in those environments, we don masks that eliminate the friction, right? For me, that was hiding my struggle in order to reduce the friction that I was experiencing with my schools or my workplace. And those masks we carry with us until we forget that they're masks anymore, right? Until only once a year at Halloween do we put on another mask and maybe convince ourselves that when we take that mask off, we're not still wearing one. And for me, it's been profoundly important to remember that, especially as of late. As I have found myself struggling and reacted to it like nails on a chalkboard, I've had to ask myself, why do I feel this way? And it seems that it is much less an innate part of me and much more something that I picked up as a self defense mechanism and a protection against a world that was not particularly well attuned to my presence. And I have a feeling that that's true of more than just me. And that's why I wanted to create this video, because I wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal struggles and experiences around struggling. And I also wanted to talk a bit about how I think sometimes our adaptations designed to protect us work exceedingly well, but come with baggage. And for me, that baggage was an overfixation on other people's thoughts and opinions and perspective on me. And so that's something that I'm working on. And I wanted to share that with you. So I think that's about it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Not apotamus. Ponderous.